Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today for a drive that I've really been looking forward to go out back to back with these two of the Shmeemobiles, my newly acquired Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 and a legend of my collection, the Aston Martin Vantage GT8. Now the reason for popping these two against one another is that they have about the same amount of power, they weigh about the same, they both have manual gearboxes, and they are both incredible driving experiences out on countryside roads, exactly the kind of thing that we're going to be doing today. There's also something quite fun for me personally, having the two of them together, which I'll explain in just a moment. So I'll show you around the cars, we'll talk about some of the numbers in a little bit more detail, then we'll head out one before the other to go and see what they're like when you drive them back to back. Why I find this matchup quite so fascinating is how extensive the list of similarities is between these two. Beyond being about the same power to weight and having manual gearboxes, it's also that they're both equipped with naturally aspirated engines. We've got the 4-litre flat 6 in the GT4, we've got a 4.7-litre V8 in the GT8. They've both got bucket seats, they've both got wings on the back, they're both the track-focused versions of more mainstream models from their respective motorsports departments based on the 718 Cayman and the Vantage. There is fundamentally one very big difference I'm sure you've already clocked onto, the engine up front versus the mid-engine, which is what I'm looking forward to today in particular, but also the price and rarity. The GT8 was limited to just 150 cars. They came in with specification just over £200,000. The GT4, well, there will be thousands of them, and it costs about 80 to 90,000 depending on your spec. This car with the PCCBs and the bucket seats went just into the 90s, but I haven't actually driven the GT8 for a fair old while. In fact, since about October in Germany, when it was trucked back to come to my dad's here, where we've got the BMW M2 still in his garage, the Hyundai Tucson, the Daily, the SLC 43, which is my mum's, and also the DB11 is over in the other garage where this has been living as well. But today we've got them together, and I want to quickly tell you why I think this is quite so cool. If you rewind back just a little bit, in fact, back in 2015, when I took delivery of the three cars that formed the Blue Crew, the first was the Ferrari FF, followed by the McLaren 675 LT, followed by the surprise arrival of the 981 Cayman GT4, the original GT4, the predecessor to this car. Now, after about a year of ownership and having driven it about 10,000 miles, it made way for the arrival of the GT8. In fact, I needed to sell it to be able to have the funds to actually purchase the GT8 and add it to the garage. But a few years on, its natural successor has arrived in the form of the 718, the follow-up car. Of course, a few differences between this and its predecessor in terms of the power, but fundamentally very much the same thing, both visually but also mechanically and how it drives. 6-speed manuals in both of these, as I said, naturally aspirated engines. But when it comes to the numbers, this is what I find quite so fascinating. The 0 to 62 miles per hour time of these two cars, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, in both cases is officially 4.4. Top speeds, 188 miles an hour, 190 miles per hour, effectively the same. Power to weight, again, about the same. The GT8 is slightly heavier, depending on your spec, because you could order this car with magnesium wheels and a carbon roof. I didn't, they were very expensive options, so it goes between 1,520 kilos and 1,560 kilos. I presume this is up towards the top end of that. The GT4 is 1,485 kilos, so about a 50 kilo difference, and then you get to the power, 420, 446, so a 26 horsepower difference. It's about the same in terms of the kind of driving, the kind of cars, or the kind of suitability that these cars are made for. If we come and take a look at the interiors, as I said, both cars have bucket seats, both cars have their manual gearboxes, both cars are made for exactly what we're going to be doing today. We've got the 918 style buckets in here, we've got the manual shifter and the clutch pedal, as we love, small Alcantara steering wheels. But I'm going to tell you a few more things as well while we're driving. Some things I know, of course, from before driving them back to back, having done many miles in these to date, and some things that I'm looking forward to learning a little bit as we go. But again, in here, the bucket seats, the nice embroideries, the good old manual shifter, clutch pedal hiding down there, Alcantara steering wheel, and check this out, 9,992 miles. Today we are going through 10,000. In this, I've owned it for 4 years and 4 months in total. Now on the GT8, I've owned this for a couple of weeks and done about 500 or 600 miles in it. Of course, I bought it new to me, but having been previously owned before that. So I think I'm going to choose GT8 first. It's been a while. Let's head out in the GT8, go have some fun, and enjoy what this is about. Obviously, one of the greatest things when it comes to this car is the sound that it makes. Pre-OPF, titanium exhaust in fact. It is all V8 noise and glory from those gigantic tailpipes sitting back there in the diffuser. But let's take a step on board then, open up the swan doors again, climb in here. But to hear it, I'm actually going to play you the cold start from just before. If you're familiar with any of my previous videos driving in this car, you will know how special and significant it is to me, both for its history in terms of the build, where I did the road to GT8 filming this car as it was being assembled by Aston Martin, but also in terms of the driving experience, because by far and away the biggest element of this is the sound. Listen to this. The way the V8 roars as you go up through the revs, there is nothing like it. I still to this day do not know how Aston Martin got this through homologation. Of course, the GT8 has come, what, a decade or so after the introduction of this shape of the Vantage, which has since been replaced, but very much a long lifespan. It's based on an older car. It feels very, very manual, and it's all about you, not with computers doing things, no auto blip. Of course, you do have traction control and things like that when you're really, really pushing on, but just to keep it here in gear and use the revs, it's a delight. It's an absolute delight, and it feels like such a hard work but rewarding car. When you get things right, the car tells you you got that right. Whether it's flipping a downshift or driving it over a mountain pass, you get a satisfaction from this car that you don't really see in much else. We've got some stones on the road here, and it's something that's both personal but also special for many reasons. You know, this is effectively the road version of the GTE car, which in 2017 won at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, has won the World Endurance Championship. You've got those design elements on the exterior, but then you've got this. It might not be the fastest car in the world, but it's the right amount of power for a road like this. You can open up the taps. It's so stupidly loud, and we've joked in the past that when you open the window it doesn't get any louder. It's just a full cacophony of noise, whatever you do in here. It's a glorious thing. You know, this, I think, represents a golden age in many ways of motoring, an era that we're probably not going to see much more of in the future. It's not as precise and clinical as the GT4, which we'll talk about more in a second. It's heavy, the steering is heavy, the clutch is heavy, the gear shifter has a nice short throw to it, but you still need to be precise with it. And when, like I say, when you bring all of these things together and you drive it correctly, you drive it how it wants to be driven, the car says to you, you got that right. And we've gone through 10,000 miles, by the way, and what a run of 10,000 miles they've been. This car has done fuel fraction around Italy to Sardinia. It's been to many places around Europe. It's done the Nürburgring. It's a car, it's been up to Scotland. I've driven it through the Cairngorms and had the most amazing time with it. It's a car that I've talked many times, I couldn't sell. I signed underneath on the side of the chassis here. I signed on the back of the headrest on the material when the seats were being sewn. This is my Aston Martin GT8 in these colours. They were bold at the time, the blue and orange. I have no regrets about them though. And every time, just taking it out for a drive like this, to hear that engine wailing, it's glorious, honestly. It's just absolutely heavenly. Happy days then, driving in the GT8, and just while it's parked here the other way around, I just think this car looks awesome. It has that beauty of the Aston Martin Vantage, but then the menacing aggression that you get from having the gigantic wing, the diffuser, the side skirts, those cutaways like I was saying, like on the GTE car. And one thing I'm noticing more actually, is if you look at the body panels here, you can actually see the weave of the carbon fibre. I'm not sure if it carries through on the camera as well as it does in person, but particularly on the wings, the entire body is carbon fibre on the GT8. So yeah, lightweight I guess compared to other Vantages, but not as lightweight as other cars that might carry that price tag, we could say. However, it is time now to talk GT4, which you can tell even just with the cars sat here is a smaller car overall. Of course, this is in Carrara white with the Aurum gold wheels. We've got the cobalt blue with the Golf orange accents, dual tones in the Shmeemobiles, although this will probably be changing colour at some point soon. Now, I'm not going to do an outside startup because, to be honest, the flat six doesn't sound anything like that does on this. But let's take a step on board, because we'll head out, go drive the same road actually with this as well, to do a bit of a back-to-back, and I can tell you that's where the clinical side of this is going to come through. Foot on the clutch, let's start it. All right, let's go. When it comes to right car, right place, for these kind of country roads, there is little better than a Cayman GT4. It has this agility to it that comes, of course, from a very small footprint and the brilliant Cayman platform, combined with this engine enlarged to 4 litres and a gearbox which is just perfectly clinical, as I said. Now, there's been a lot discussed about how on the 981 and here on the 718, when you're in, let's say, second gear, the very long ratios mean that you do end up going very, very quickly, and it's quite hard to get it to the red line in second if you want to be obeying the speed limits, we can say. But then when you blip a downshift, and yes, you could auto blip if you preferred, it just gives you this rewarding sense of an amazing driving experience. Everything just comes together and is so beautifully balanced, from the steering to the suspension to the braking to the chassis to the powertrain to the delivery of the 420 horsepower. And down a road like this, you're never left wondering, where is the car, how's it guiding down? And you've got that handling in line with a mid-engine supercar. The engine is right back behind you in such a small platform that it just feels so connected. You don't have the weight to the steering of the GT8, for example, and you don't also have quite the same soundtrack. You have an exhaust button, but I don't think I've ever driven it without pressing that button. As soon as I've taken a seat on board the car, you just wouldn't want to. It's always better, opens the valves a touch earlier, and maybe I'll do something with the sound. But when you put your foot on the throttle, you can bring out that flat six a little bit. Yes, like I said, not necessarily getting to the red line, but this goes down a country lane like this in the way that hot hatches do. It just blasts, it soaks up the ride from the bumps that you have on the tarmac, and it just feels right at home. This is where a car like this wants to be driven. The shifts are just awesome. Like I say, it's very perfect. It's very spot on what you would do if you were trying to, you know, accurately write the rule book. And in some ways that detracts slightly from the whole experience, I would say. The GT8, when you take it out, is that kind of driving day you're not going to be forgetting. You will never, you know, every time you drive it, it's a special experience. With this, I feel like you can live with it more. It's more of a daily kind of car. Up to 8,000 RPM in first gear. What a glorious bracket. The car is just brilliant. The car is, when it comes to any metrics you might try and evaluate a car by, it does everything. It's fantastic. And that's what makes this so good, that you can just crawl around town, go to the shops with it. You've got a boot up front and a boot in the back, or you can go for a hoon down an amazing road and have a massive smile on your face, knowing that it's one of the very best cars that has ever existed for that kind of driving. It is absolutely incredible. So these two then, you do have stop-start. The 981 didn't have stop-start. These two cars do this in such a different way, but both are amazing driving experiences. That has been extraordinarily fun, but also very interesting. Now, of course, there's a lot more to say about the two of these. Parked now with their rear wings on show, a different view of the two cars. You can see quite how different they are in terms of the size, but in terms of driving experiences as well. This is what I was saying. The GT8 is much more of an event. That's the car that you would take out for your Sunday runs, just to enjoy the drive. You don't need to be going anywhere. You're just taking the car out to go for a drive to enjoy that old school feel. This, on the other hand, is a car you could use all of the time, but has a massive sense of excitement and reward when you do drive it and when you do want to enjoy it and drive it a little bit more. And of course, you can now get a GT4 with Porsche's incredible PDK, but to me, this is for the kind of driving I've just been doing. This is a car that needs that manual box. It is so good, even if the ratios are very long. And yes, you could get a new gearbox or an adaptation to this with the final drive to make it a little bit shorter, but you would of course reduce the top speed at the other end as well. And this car will at some point head over to Germany, as the GT8 has in the past, for some runs on the Nürburgring, and also to take it on the Autobahn to see what it's like as well. But it's a mix of sporty characteristics, aero, downforce of course, with the rear wing, with the extended splitter at the front. I've always thought the side intakes are cool as well. The GT4 logo obviously for the cooling of the engine, which sits inside there, that 4 litre flat 6, where they've taken the 3 litre, enlarged it up to 4 litre, a bit different to the old GT4's engine, which was the 3.8 effectively from the GT3. So very complicated to get into all of the technicalities between them. But in terms of driving experiences, they are two incredible cars. I feel very, very lucky to own both of these and to have been able to do this drive back to back. I don't think it would be possible to choose one if it wasn't for the emotional connection that I have to the GT8, where of course it's always going to win, given, well, it's the second oldest or second longest of the cars that I currently own, that I've had it since collecting in early 2017, way back now, having gone through that build process in late 2016 at the factory of this very car. Now, like I said, this doesn't have all of the lightweight options. You could order the magnesium wheels. You could also order it with the carbon fibre roof. I quite liked it with the cobalt blue roof. I did spec the carbon back here, and there are a couple of other things as well. I guess if you take out the sound system and that kind of thing around it too, to save a little bit more of the weight. But in terms of performance, in terms of acceleration, I would say they're more just different than they are one being arguably better than the other. It's not really like that. You're in second gear largely all of the time in this, occasionally up into third. You have a decent amount of torque in third. The GT8 has tons of torque in every gear, whether you're cruising along in third or even if you're in fourth or something. Well, to be honest, they both do. The power delivery that comes from the naturally aspirated engines. In the GT8, you're more up and down between second and third, and you're right in the power band. In the GT4, it's a little bit harder thanks to those very, very, very long geared ratios that the car has. In terms of interiors, just to grab the keys, I've got a pocket full of random car keys here at the moment. Nearly dropped that. This is the valet key for the GT8 as opposed to the glass, lovely crystal one. I'll just pull open the door slightly. We can have both cars open side by side. You've got the swan doors in the GT8, GT4 normal traditional. In here we've got the yellow stitching. Very Porsche interior, very Aston Martin interior. They did update the waterfall, as it's called, the centre console, but this still has the really old school screen that folds up in the centre of it. So this is harder work. This is a harder car to drive. It's a more involving car to drive. It's a less dailyable car to drive as a result, but they are both brilliant, brilliant machines, it has to be said. Both are more than you could ever really need in the real world if you want to take a car out for a pleasant drive. In terms of steering, I think the GT8 has slightly more feedback. In terms of ride, the GT4 is a little bit firmer, no doubt slightly better on track. GT8 slightly better on the road, but in reality, there's so much between them that's very, very, very similar, and so much between them that's also very, very different. But that's it for now though. So cool to take those out back to back to drive them both. Thank you very much for watching. As always, guys, I appreciate your support an awful lot. For more videos with the Shmeemobiles in the future, that's also going to be over on the Shmuseum channel. So if you aren't already over there, do go and subscribe. There's going to be some very exciting stuff, including the behind the scenes of the garage. And like I said, lots more driving out on country roads as well. That's it for now though. Thank you very much as always, guys. Your support is hugely appreciated. And I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.